I discovered that my parents had transferred all the property to my younger brother on the day I returned from the regional hospital. The weather reports predicted frost, and I felt a sense of coldness and isolation when I arrived at my parents' house. Mom and Dad were already seated at the table, looking tired but also lively. I had just enough time to sit down and warm up before my mother. I said in an icy tone, "We decided to bequeath everything to Vitya. You can handle it yourself, and you're no good." She didn't finish because her voice suddenly trembled, but her eyes were unwavering. I tightened my grip on the umbrella handle. I didn't answer. I sat down on the edge of a stool and covered my face with my hands. I didn't feel hurt. I felt empty. As if all my feelings I was forcibly removed from my mother's womb, along with my belief in the warmth of my family. I was born in a small regional center. My father worked as a mechanic at a local enterprise for his entire career. My mother worked in the school library. When I was young, they adored me. My father rode a bicycle. My mother taught me to read fairy tales. Later, when I was 11, my mother became pregnant with my brother. I was happy about having a brother. I was prepared to babysit. But time passed. It soon became clear that little brother Vito was allowed everything. He seemed to absorb all the love of his parents, and I was left with fragments of the former warmth. I didn't notice how jealous I was, but I'm not fooling you. Your job is to help your family. I learned early to give in, adjust, and keep at least a little peace of mind. That's it. I graduated from an institute in the city with high hopes for my future. But after studying, I returned to my native home because I couldn't find a job in the city. It was difficult, and my parents swore that they would always support me. A couple of months after returning, I took up residence in a small room in our old hut behind the yard. By that time, my parents were already helping my brother with buying a scooter and paying for some courses. They also asked me to arrange family life. "Vitanka, we have a talented boy. He should get all the best. And you are a girl. You will manage to earn women's happiness for yourself. Be a good girl." I agreed because I loved everyone and tried not to cause conflict. But life went on. My brother grew up, graduated from school, and started working in different places. Sometimes he left. My mother constantly covered his mistakes, saying he was sometimes a nanny and sometimes a cleaner. This is the end of the line. My secretary's mother wanted to shake hands with my daughter. "We have a difficult time, and I need to know why you're going to the city. We have a family here who needs your help." My father grumbled from time to time that it was time for me to look for a better place, but he didn't do anything concrete. Viti only laughed, bringing burnt parts of his motorcycles into the house and asking for money for new ones. It's clear that stuttering is impractical. My mother looked at me with such a reproach that I lived in constant fear. As a sister, I was obliged to help. The years went by. I turned 30, then 35, then 40. I meekly carried my parents' medicines, paid their utility bills, deposits for repairs, and sometimes paid for lunches because my father's pension was small. Then, suddenly, I became interested in buying all sorts of miracle health supplements. But most I had hoped that when the time came, my parents would divide the property fairly and support me if they suddenly had the accumulated money. My father had said for many years that our common house would be everything according to the law. I put in all my strength, but everything turned out differently when I found out that the house was only for my brother. I was crushed. My mother's words about you are irrelevant. After a long pause, my father reluctantly said, "You're strong and Vitya doesn't succeed. You're not used to working hard." "Well, you I looked up at my family and didn't recognize them. Where was that mother who said she loved us both equally? Where was that father who stroked my head and called me a good girl? Anger stirred within me. I had a feeling, but I was just tired. I said I needed time to process what had happened and left the house without another word. My mother shook her head in displeasure. I took a lot of walks in the cooling park, where the trees had already shed their golden leaves. I sat on a wet bench and watched the gray clouds flow across the sky. Inside, I was disgusted, as if I had been betrayed by my family, or rather, as if I had allowed myself to be treated. I'm not sure how old I am, but I remember transferring money from my small salary to help pay for my father's knee surgery. Then, out of the blue, he said Vita also needs money because drinking alcohol is dangerous. I wanted to shout, but I couldn't find the words to express my rage. I felt like everything had changed forever. The next day, when I got home, I declared that I would no longer pay their bills or give them money for Vita. My parents reacted abruptly, and my father even blushed with anger. My mother began to lament, "Oh, you ungrateful one. We raised you, fed you, and put you on your feet. And now you leave us and walk around the kitchen remembering how, in my childhood, I was told that I was obliged to help my family to the last. It turns out that all the love of my family was reduced to accounting, since they raised me. Now I owe them for life." I listened to all the I was silent, but my heart was pounding as if it were about to jump out of my chest. In the end, my mother said with contempt, "You were always superfluous. Now, it's been confirmed. Go wherever you want." That same evening, I went to the room behind the courtyard and collected only the most modern stuffed Podemo. But where to go? I had a friend, Zena, who sometimes let me spend the night when I returned late from the neighboring district, but I couldn't stay with her. I had been her for a long time. Then I remembered my friend Olga, who had left for another city about 10 years ago. We lost contact, and the apartment or housing had to be rented. I described the confusion I had felt for 47 years and how I did not lose my savings because I kept leaving my relatives. I decided that I could not return, even if it would be difficult. A week passed, and I settled down to spend the night with Zena. But she lived with her family. They were cramped. I only did that. I helped with the housework. It was true that once I crossed paths with him by chance on the street. He was walking with a group of friends. He saw me, mockingly said, "Oh, sister, do you live?" Even though I answered yes, "I live without you. It's karma," he snorted and waved his hand. "Well, fine. Anyway, I'll get the house." I didn't say anything. I just felt such melancholy, and ran away. I used to love my brother. I used to babysit him. And now I was met with disbelief when I told them I was leaving. I had to leave Zena too because her relatives were arriving. I found a room in a private house on the outskirts. I moved my belongings there. The elderly owner, Antonina Petrovna, was a friendly woman. She asked if I had children or a husband. I shook my head. I didn't have a family. My whole life revolved around my parents and brother. Now, I had to learn to live. I was working in an office where I was responsible for issuing sales documents. The salary was low, but I was determined to find a part-time job on the side. I was wearing an old woolen sweater that her parents had worn since school. We were silent for another 10 days, but then my mother wrote. She knew I had a phone and WhatsApp, and it was there that a short message came through. "We're in trouble. We can't pay for treatment. We need $30. I urgently sat and read the message on my phone. It was an evil caricature of money and my help. I was rushing to ask them because I loved them and was afraid they wouldn't cope. Now, I felt only dull irritation and resentment. "Mom, you gave everything to Vita. He should pay. I wrote in response. I didn't want to answer the phone, but I did. I heard my mother's sobbing voice. She's going through a difficult period now. She has debts and pressure from my father's knee problem. She asked me to lend her a loan. I was taken aback by the surprise. I was excommunicated from the family and called superfluous. He demanded money again, so I told him directly, "Sorry, Mum. I don't have it. I live in a rented room." My mother shouted a storm of curses and reproaches at me, calling me heartless. As soon as possible, I left my parents, leaving them in the lurch. At the end, she exclaimed, "We'll never forgive you for this." I didn't listen. I ended the call. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I clutched the phone to my chest and thought, why is this happening? This is my mother. Why is she talking to me like this? Then I realized that she was stopping me from making the last pennies. It took another couple of weeks. I tried to distract myself with work. I was looking for a part-time job. I lived with Antonina Petrovna, and she was my time job. I helped her in the garden sometimes, and I gave her some extra money at the market in the evenings. I kept a notebook with notes that I developed into stories. I dreamed of becoming a writer when I was young, but I dismissed my desires for the sake of caring for my family. Now, I reached for paper and pens out of the corner. It became clear that my father needed me. He called me himself. His voice sounded tired. "Daughter, please excuse us. Your mother has a bad heart. We didn't want to cut you off from home. It just happened that way." I interrupted him. "Dad, you have already decided everything. I have nothing to do with it. You wanted me to pay for your existence. And the heir was my brother. So now, all the questions." My father began to say something, blaming them for Vitya's situation. He had loans, then problems, and he let it slip that Vitya mortgaged the house to get a loan, apparently hoping that his parents would give him all the rights. I was numb. My brother already used what he got and got into debt. My father asked me to help close this debt. Otherwise they can take away the house. You understand? My daughter? This is our house, too. He was shaking, and I was in pain, but I remembered how they had crossed me out. How my mother had said in front of the guests, "You're not our daughter if you don't spend money on us." And I just said, "I'm sorry. I can't help you. I'm on the rented corner myself." My father paused, then whispered, "The Petrovnas." "Vitya." My mother and father showed up at dawn when I was about to leave for work. I heard someone say there's someone knocking loudly in the yard. I looked out the window. Mom's angry with Barakashka, wielding a poker. I stopped her and said, "This is my family." She looked surprised. "You have a strange family. It breaks into the gate so much." I went out into the yard. "Mom immediately attacked you. You're completely out of control. Your brother can be put in jail for debts, and my father and I, then where will we go? We'll take out a mortgage. It's not too late." Next to Vitya, I looked out from under my forehead. My father tried to look calm, but he didn't succeed. "Dad, why don't you ask Vitya to sell a car or something?" "Mom, literally." "Yes. How can you not be ashamed? Do you want to leave your brother?" I smiled bitterly. I was scared and hurt, but at the same time I understood that there was no turning back. "You all issued everything to Vitya. I said I was abandoned. Now, let your son dispose of the property and save it. I will not pay for someone else's inheritance. Go away, Po. I'm late for work." Mom sighed loudly. "We realized that we were wrong about you." "No, you're on me." "Daughter, further slouch." He just mumbled. "Well, what can you do?" Vitya kicked the fence and said, squinting, "You'll regret it again, sister." She went after her parents. Antonina Petrovna came out on the porch. shaking her head. I didn't understand. They're blackmailing you. I shrugged my shoulders in silence. My heart pounded with both horror and a strange determination not to be caught up in their ploy. Ever since that day, my parents had declared war on me. I'd learned from the neighbors. My mother lied to everyone. She left them in need and refused to pay their accounts. I have everything I need, but I still can't get past the fact that I'm a daughter who cries on her own at night. I don't want to get back into the old trap. I know that if I agree to help again, no one will remember me. I'm going to live and hope that someday I will be appreciated. I've had enough. My parents' house was really under threat. Vitya mortgaged it for a large sum and got into some shady deals. One evening, my mother came to me in complete despair, sobbing. "Daughter, do something," she begged. "In 2 weeks, they will describe our property and evict us." I offered to sell the car to my dacha. My mother's voice rose in pitch as she continued to speak, tears streaming down her face. "How dare you? This won't help save us from a loan. You're a hard worker. We'll pay, or you'll be left on the street." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She didn't see the contradictions. It was all my brother's property, and yet I was the one responsible for paying. "Why don't you go to my brother himself?" I repeated. "It's his property, not mine." My mother grabbed my hand. "He's a poor guy." I looked into her eyes and realized she loves him. Despite all his debts and irresponsibility, she never loved me so much or forgot how to love. But this is not my problem anymore. I took my hand away and whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry, but I won't do this." She looked at me with such horror and hatred. I shuddered. "Yes, you are to blame," she shouted and jumped out the door, leaving me completely without a family. 2 months later, I had adapted to the loneliness and, surprisingly, felt somewhat relieved. I no longer had to give half of my salary to my parents, and I could afford to rent a tiny one-room apartment on the outskirts of the city. The owner went to her daughter's house and asked her to look after the apartment, which was cheaper for me. I worked late at night as usual, then read and wrote my stories in a notebook. For the first time in many years, I felt a strength that was not there before. Sometimes in the evenings, tears came to my eyes from resentment that everything had turned out this way with my family, but I continued to live differently. Sometimes I was tormented as if I was entering the house and there my mother, father, and Vitya were. I was sitting at a set table, and they couldn't find a place for me. One early morning, I went out to buy groceries and saw a man who looked like Vitya at the entrance. I thought I was mistaken, but no. It was him. Stooped, dimmed, a couple of steps towards, he smiled guiltily. "Sister, don't turn away. Please tell me." I was wary, but I stopped. "We almost lost the house. It was taken away for debts." Parents in despair. I thought maybe. There's no question that he hesitated. He was going to say return, but USC quickly interrupted, saying I can't help. I was deprived of the right to the house. "I have no money. You decided that yourself." Vitti looked at me helplessly, then almost shouted, "Yes. I didn't want to." "So it's all on them, Mum. They made it up." Now I'm extreme. It looked like he was panicking, but I couldn't believe what he was saying. How many times was he blamed on? I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but I can't help it." He kicked the ground, clearly wanting to get angry. But then he sighed heavily and muttered, "Well, yes, I understand. You're different now. You're cold." He left, even more slouching, and I felt a rush of thoughts. Pity for my brother, anger, and pain. I felt that I had done the right thing. I know that sometimes you have to be firm not to fall into the same trap again. I found out that my parents has moved to my grandmother's old house in a neighboring village. It was dilapidated and lacked amenities, but they had no other place to live. I was told that my mother was seriously ill, and my father's stomach clenched. I was afraid to go. I imagined these curses, threats and humiliations are no match for my strength. One day, I gathered my courage and went to that village early on Saturday morning. I bought fruit and medicines that I knew they needed. I found a shabby old house and knocked on the door. My mother grimaced as if she saw a terrible enemy. "Why did she come to visit and find out how you are from the back of there?" My father came out, thin and hunched, and sighed. "Come in." "Since you've already come." I went into a dark room. Inside, it smelled damp. It was obvious that the house was not roasting. Vitya was standing next to the stove. When he saw me, he immediately hid his eyes. As if he was ashamed, I gave him a handout with apples. "We will save you." "I need 100 for the operation, remember." This is the end of the line. My father's legs are also in trouble. My words were burned, but I no longer sobbed inside. I became stronger. "I'm not rich, Mom, but I brought what I could," I answered. "Your pennies will only fit your coffin." She chuckled. "Go away. We don't need your pathetic visit anymore." My mother wanted to intervene, but I pushed her away. "Go on to your girlfriends. You left us anyway. Now don't pretend." I exhaled, looked at my father's tired face, my brother's guilty eyes, and my mother's mad look, and realized I know that nothing has changed. Don't be fooled by the idea that they will appreciate my attempt to improve our relationship. It's clear that Vita is even more protective of me than before. She only expects money, and my soul is heavy. But I know the truth. Love can't be bought, and family can't be made to respect me. In the fall, I decided to go in search of a new job. I wanted to find something. I received more pay and started going for interviews. I eventually got a job as an administrator in a small publishing house that needed someone who could work with documents in parallel. I showed some friends a couple of my stories, and they responded with a suggestion I hadn't expected. "Why don't you try to publish in a local literary almanac?" I was initially afraid, but we've decided to send the texts we've written and your stories are of interest. We will publish them in the next issue of the almanac. I sat at the table and read this letter, and my eyes filled with tears. But I felt no pain, I felt joy. I imagined, "Mum, you are of no use," but that's not true. It's clear that this isn't for them. It's for me. Life is slowly teaching me to make money. I may not see the future clearly, but I'm confident that I'm making progress. I'm taking charge of my own path, and I'm enjoying the simple pleasures like good tea and a new book. No one will ever blame me for spending my money on myself. If Mom or Dad called again, begging for help, I firmly told them that it wasn't my fault. They gave everything to my brother, and he got into debt. I could hear my mother crying and my father sighing heavily, but I knew their words held no love or remorse. They just wanted to use my pity to get money. I would wake up from nightmares sometimes at night, during which my mother stood angrily on the doorstep, shouting that I was a traitor and that my brother laughed behind my back. But every day, I heal my soul. I love myself and I do not fear other people's judgment. One winter, when I was flipping, I was writing a new sketch when the phone rang. It was my mother. I took a deep breath and picked up. Her voice sounded tired. "Mom, we're at my grandmother's house. There's no electricity. The doctor said he needed to pay for injections and a course of medications." I remained silent. I felt pity and remembered all the humiliations. I asked her directly, "What do you want from me?" My mother cried for money and added, "Hush, be a human." "You understand. We are dying here." I hung up, closed my eyes, and said, "I'll give you some of the medicine, but I won't give you a lot of money. I don't have any." She sobbed as she was resigning, and I felt a sense of relief. They may not recognize me as a daughter, but they can't refuse my help. I will take care of them, even if they rejected me. I didn't sleep at night, thinking about past conversations. Suddenly, I realized that everything that had happened, I'm stronger now, so I'm not going back to my old role. I'll help them as much as I need to, and I won't wait for gratitude. I know the love I long for will never be reciprocated by them. But now, my own life is more important to me. I went outside. It was cold in the dim light of dawn, but I saw a glimmer. I have hope. I have my stories. I have a new job at a publishing house. I have a few friends who are ready to support me and my parents if they ever realize that they did this to me. It's almost winter, and one day the editor-in-chief of the publishing house invited me for a conversation. He said he had seen my texts and wanted to offer me cooperation. As an author who writes short articles and short stories for the literary section, I agreed to everything. I suppressed a smile, as if life was really getting better, and started typing my texts not only in the almanac but also in the magazine itself. I received a modest but separate fee, and I woke up every day in my tiny apartment. I repeated, "You can do anything because you went through the worst." Soon, spring came to the city. The trees bloomed, and the first flowers appeared in the markets. I was happy about these changes, like a child. My parents did not call me anymore. I heard he ran away, fearing creditors. No one knew where he was. Sometimes, I thought that maybe my brother will understand what he did and try to restore everything, but he'll shrug it off. They interrupted in the village. If I was soft and compliant, I'd rush to save them again. But I couldn't take on all their problems. Everyone had to bear their own. I was ready to help them shoulder their own burden. They asked me not to blackmail them, but to approach their next carrot and stick. Now, sometimes when I woke up, I no longer cried, but I smiled. I had manuscripts ahead of me. I had the opportunity to write in the evenings. I plunged into worlds that I invented myself. In my stories, the characters learned to understand each other, even though they faced injustice. I let out all their hurt on the page, feeling the words release me. In moments, I was talking to the old me, the one who had allowed others to use her kindness and love for years without getting any warmth in return. Now, I was getting stronger by listening to my heart and saying, I refused to betray myself by letting the locals talk about how I left the old people behind. My mother will explain to everyone that I stole their help and ran away. I know the truth. I realize that sometimes the people you consider closest can be the most alien, not because they hate you, but because they have. I've built a picture of the world where you always owe, but I've broken free. I don't know where this path will lead, but I smile at the new day. When the first spring leaves rustle under my feet, I feel free for the first time in my life. I hope that someday I could still talk to you. I will explain to my parents and brother that I am not an enemy, but a person who deserves respect and love. If I fail, I will still have my life. It may have started late, but it's real, and I believe more and more. It's never too late to free yourself from fetters. If they pull you, they are a barrier from yourself. Esteem mum. Let him do as he wants. Dad, if he understands, somewhere in the soul he will take my side, and I will move on. I will sell my book. I will walk through the bookstore and see a collection of my stories on the shelf. I will smile, remembering how I once ran away from home without a plan, but found freedom soon. I will be 48. I will meet this day. Vosmoy. I live alone, but I live in harmony with myself. My mother's words will sound like reproaches, merciless. You are of no use, but all this is now the past. Life has given me a lesson. You need to love others without destroying yourself. and you need to help those who really deserve it and not those who take your help for granted. Summer, I will buy a bicycle with the money I earn. I will go to the river where I spent my childhood years. I will sit on the bank where I was a little girl with high hopes. Now, after all, I will again become that girl who can dream only consciously. I understand that all real life is in my own hands. I do not know if the hour of full forgiveness will come, but I am ready for it. I leave everything in the past and no longer see myself as a powerless toy. This is valuable. After a long downpour, the sun comes out and the clouds part. I stand with my head down. I may not have any more riches, a house, or an inheritance. I may remain a useless daughter in my mother's eyes, but I can't be taken away from me anymore.